It's a pleasure to have you with us. As you know, that the situation between Iran and Israel has taken some sharp turns over 24 hours, and we are really looking forward to your insights and perspectives on what's unfolding and where we might be headed. So, my first question to you would be: how do you assess the strategic message behind Israel's strike on Iran, and what does it show about the shifting balance of power in the region? Is it just the fear of a nuclear threat, or is it more?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is something that Israel has long wanted to do, and successive U.S. presidents have cautioned against it and restrained Israel. Uh, Obviously, first and foremost, the Israeli uh, uh, operations aim to destroy, severely damage, setback, if not destroy, the Iranian nuclear program.
Yeah.
Uh, what they've also, in the process, certainly yesterday demonstrated is a degree of military and intelligence superiority, which is frankly quite stunning. Um, Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, has more or less suggested that there is a broader goal to this operation, which is one of regime change. It's fundamentally the same strategy that underlies Israel's operations in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
With other words, a collective punishment and targeting of the population
Yeah.
is designed to foster an uprising against Hamas. Um, Netanyahu was very clear in his remarks yesterday, in which he said that the Israeli attacks on a variety of facilities and military officials, nuclear scientists, was an opportunity for Iranians to regain their freedom.
So, in your opinion, why do you think this particular moment was chosen for the strike from the Israeli perspective? Because it's already so involved in Gaza. And how does it tie with the overall regional calculations of Israel? Is it trying to send a message to the actors, regional actors beyond Israel, beyond Iran?
I don't think it's about a message. I think there are various factors that play a role here. I think, first of all, that Netanyahu read Washington very well. It may very well be, we don't know exactly what has transpired.
Yeah.
What we do know is that the Americans were informed in advance.
Yeah.
Uh, they made that clear if there was any doubt when they decided on last Wednesday to evacuate all
Yeah.
non-essential personnel from their
Exactly.
embassy in
Evacuating it.
Baghdad,
Yeah.
and gave that option to diplomats and other American personnel serving in other Middle Eastern capitals. They Trump was very clear initially that he did not want Israel to strike. It may very well be that Netanyahu, in a phone call on Monday with Trump, informed him of Israel's plans, and that Trump said, "Don't do it."
Yeah.
If that's the case, the problem with that is that "don't do it" isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Unless Trump was willing to uh, make clear that there would be consequences if Israel went against his will, Netanyahu will have read that at the very least as a tacit green light.
Yeah.
And I think what we've seen subsequently in terms of Trump's statements is that he now sees an opportunity to to use it as leverage to force Iran to be more flexible. Let's keep in mind that Trump's negotiating strategy is not a give and take. It's basically saying, "This is what I want you to do. You're going to do it.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it, this is what's going to happen. And it ain't going to be nice."
Yes. More of an
So, in
imposing
that
nature
sense,
than negotiating.
yeah. And now, I'm not saying with that this was pre-planned by Trump, but he's certainly getting on the bandwagon. Uh, I think that there are several other aspects to this. One, I mean, there's a perception that Israel has not won the Gaza war,
Yeah.
and that is on the one hand true, but Israel also was limiting itself. In other words, to achieve what Israel wants to achieve, it has to fully occupy the Gaza Strip and administer it.
Yeah.
It doesn't fully occupy the Gaza Strip, even though it more or less controls it, and it certainly doesn't administer it. So, what the operations certainly yesterday have done in Iran is restore Israel's military and intelligence capabilities, or credibility, if you wish, and that is beyond doubt. I think the icing on the cake, if you wish, in this is that it led to a postponement of a French-Saudi conference under UN auspices that was going to look at furthering the goal of a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is one led to the postponing of the conference. Two, Gaza Palestinians are not right now on the agenda.
Yeah.
No doubt they'll come back.
Yeah.
It's a temporary reprieve, but nonetheless, as far as Netanyahu will be concerned, it's icing on the cake.
So what do you think? I mean, and now that we're talking about the U.S. involvement in all of this and it being preempted about the strike that Israel is going to have, what level of involvement of the U.S. do you think has in this strike that Israel has done? Because Trump's statement is, some of the words that he's used in his statements is like it's excellent and there's more to come. Some words that he's using. So what do you think is coming ahead now that Iran is a strike back?
I mean, look, in excellent is a post operation comment.
Yeah.
And it was excellent. Whether you like it or not, it's neither here nor there. As a matter of fact, it was a very effectively, very well executed operation that demonstrated Israeli capabilities.
Yeah.
I think what involvement going forward will be, we'll have to wait and see. That will depend on the nature of Iranian missile and drone strikes.
Yeah.
If you go back to last year, the United States was helpful in, as were other countries, including Arab countries, in downing missiles and drones fired by Iran against Israel.
Yeah.
It will also depend on whether or not Iran fulfills its threat to attack U.S. bases.
Yeah.
Or French or British bases in the region, and if it does so, how it does so, and where it does so. So, I think and then there's a third factor, and that is that Trump's base, both within the Republican Party and his more general popular support base, are divided on this. So you've gotten very senior, or the most senior Republican congressmen and congresswomen supporting Israel. But you've also had very important Republican members of the Congress, as well as very influential conservative commentators, basically saying, we have nothing to do with this. This is not our war.
Yeah.
And the American people want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And so this is, basically Netanyahu, in a sense, has put Trump in a somewhat difficult position. Certainly, if the Iranians add to that by attacking U.S. targets.
So Iran has done it's given its answer in the form of a retaliatory strike on Israel's intelligence bases. What do you have to say on that?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I was saying that Iran has done its retaliatory attack on the intelligence sites in Israel. What do you have to say about that? What's your perspective?
Well, first of all, that's not new. Iran did the same thing last year.
Yeah.
Iran, very recently, in the last week or two, has claimed that it has been able to lay its hands on hundreds of thousands of documents, Israeli documents, regarding Israel's undeclared nuclear program. Now, remember that Israel several years ago raided an archive in a very bold operation in Tehran and brought back to Israel hundreds of thousands of nuclear program related documents. Now, the difference here is that Israel has made those documents, or at least many of them, public.
Public, yeah.
We haven't seen any of the Iranian documents. We haven't. So, with other words, it's an Iranian claim at this point, but no verification.
So, how do you think this whole situation will impact the regional alliances and the calculus of the international stakeholders, for example, the US, Russia, and the Gulf states?
Well, I think the ones that are primarily going to be affected by this are potentially the Gulf states.
Yeah.
We're in a very different Middle East compared to 2015, when the international nuclear agreement was achieved, from which Trump walked away in 2018. At that time, Iran was viewed by the Gulf states as a imminent threat that needed to be countered. That is not to say that the Gulf states today don't view Iran as a threat. They do. But even in 2015, the Gulf states' primary concern was not Iran's nuclear program. That was Israel's primary concern. The Gulf states' primary concern was Iran's ballistic missile program and its axis of resistance, its alliance with non-state actors in various Arab states. Today, the Gulf states, as well as other countries like Turkey, and to a degree even Iran, even though a lot of people don't want to admit that, uh, see or view their relationships and where they want to go as one in which you freeze your differences,
Yeah.
and focus on areas where you can cooperate, and primarily, first and foremost, economic. Now, to be fair, that has worked less well for Iran because the Gulf states are limited by U.S. sanctions.
Yes.
But as a matter of principle, if those sanctions hadn't taken place, you would have seen probably significant Gulf investment in Iran.
Yeah.
So the Gulf states today don't want to see a war. They didn't want to see Israel attack Iran. You saw almost immediately after or during the attacks a very strong statement by Saudi Arabia, which condemned the operations. And they, of course, are concerned that if the Iranians were to attack a, um, a American facility in the Gulf, and there are many,
Yeah.
that would put them in the front line.
So, do you think in any way could US use this situation as a leverage to force or maybe pressurize Iran to sign the nuclear deal and follow it and implement it in any way?
Well, that's certainly what the U.S. would like to do.
Yeah.
But let's be clear. Um, this regime in Iran has been in office for 46 years.
Yeah.
It's been under pressure,
Yeah.
varying degrees of pressure, but significant pressure
Yeah.
for 46 years. And it hasn't bowed. You know, there are those who would argue that 2015, the international agreement, was Iran bowing.
Yeah.
But Iran has never, or has always maintained that it doesn't want to build a nuclear weapon. There's the issue playing right now, which was part of the reason why, for the first time in 20 years, Iran was condemned by the International Atomic Energy Agency this week. The issue that Iran uh, has enriched uranium to 60%, which is true.
Yeah.
But I think that when at the same time Iran maintains that it does not want to develop a nuclear weapon. I think what's important here is one's got to understand the process by which Iran got to 60%. And the process is that Donald Trump walked away from the Iranian nuclear agreement in 2018. For the first year, Iran adhered to the provisions of that agreement. When that didn't work in terms of bringing the United States back to the negotiating table, Iran started to gradually and progressively violate the term or no longer adhere to the terms of the agreement.
Yes.
And now, in a sense, it's a victim of its own strategy
Yeah.
because it has enriched to 60% as part of that process, and that's being turned against it.
Yeah.
So it's in many ways an Iranian miscalculation.
So you just mentioned in the very start of our conversation that this one of the motives behind this whole strike is the regime change. Do you think what in your opinion is the likelihood of Israel achieving that motive of the regime change in Iran?
Uh, Let me put it this way: try and think of an example where external intervention has led to regime change, popular regime change. Let's be clear,
Yes.
rather than installment of another regime.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure that I can think of one immediately off the top of my head. Uh, you know, Iranians may well, or a significant segment of the Iranian public may want to be liberated,
Yeah.
but they're going to have to liberate themselves. It's not going to come from the air force of another country.
Yeah. So the last question would be that do you see any realistic pathways towards de-escalation of this, or are we seeing a prolonged cycle of retaliation in the coming days, in the coming weeks?
Well, first of all, if you want a hopeful sign, uh, fact of the matter is that the Iranians have not officially said yet whether or not they are going to attend the sixth round of U.S. Iranian nuclear negotiations. I would be surprised if they go. I think it would be very smart on their part if they did. It would be also out of character to respond in that way. But more importantly, I think what one has to watch is whether an Iranian refusal to go to the sixth round of talks is a postponement or cancellation. I suspect it will be framed in a way in which it is a postponement. The Iranians have said until now, again, it hasn't been officially turned into policy, that they saw no sense of talking as long as bombs were falling on Tehran.
Yeah.
So, with other words, by implication, yeah, we can talk once this stops.
So we are seeing like a prolonged cycle. That means because if Iran is strike, then Israel probably will retaliate, and then Iran might retaliate again if better sense
I,
doesn't prevail.
I, I think we're certainly talking about days,
Yeah.
but what happens in those days is crucial to determine whether or not this gets prolonged or not. Um, you know, I, it, it's going to have to be a situation in which both sides can claim a degree of victory.
That's true. Thank you so much, Mr. Dorsey. That brings me to the end of my questions. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. It has been incredibly valuable to hear your incisive perspective, and I'm sure our audience will love it as well. We truly appreciate you being here today with us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This will be published on our YouTube channel as well as social media. I shall be sending you the links as soon as it gets live.
Great. Thank